So the other day, Jake from TBR and Mundane Matt were having a discussion about a citizen's right to vote, as you can plainly see here, and I agreed with the premise that a citizen's right to vote shouldn't be revoked. I don't see how taking away a person's right to vote acts as either a deterrent nor a fitting punishment. So I tweeted, "What good would revoking their right to vote do? I can't vote, guess I should stop killing kids now." Then SirDoubtsAlot responds with,
"Why let those who demonstrate disregard for society exercise power over society's government?"
Well, I'll admit this seems like a legitimate standpoint on the surface, but a lot of people do things that demonstrate a disregard for society. Littering shows a disregard for society. I still think you should retain your right to vote, even if your crime is several orders of magnitude higher than the littering. So I reply, even a criminal can have sound political views, and some rights should be inalienable. SirDoubtsAlot retorts,
"They may have sound political views, but by acting against the society, they lose the power to affect society."
So I said, sounds awfully draconian. It's not like murder is on the ballot, so who cares if a murderer votes? At this point, I'm trying to lead the conversation towards the value of punitive measures.
Voting is exercising power over society. If you act against society, why be allowed to keep power over it?
I understand the point he's getting at, that killing a member of society is essentially an attack on the society itself, and therefore they are no longer worthy of participation because they've shown a disregard for the well-being of said society. However, the reality is that something like murder or rape are interpersonal crimes of passion. It's different than someone who is overtly trying to attack or dismantle an entire society itself. A murderer isn't going to vote based on their complacency towards violence, so allowing them to keep the right to vote doesn't have any negative impact save for our primitive desire for revenge and punishment. I then tweeted, because they are still citizens. You make it sound like they are guilty of high treason.
You wouldn't consider murder as bad as high treason?
One is an act against society, the other is an interpersonal crime of passion. Now I'll admit that murder is worse than treason, but the point isn't the severity of the offense, it's whether or not it can be reasonably deemed an act against all society and therefore justifiably treated as such.
So murder isn't as bad as treason, got it.
Work on your reading comprehension, bud, unless you enjoy strawmanning instead of debate.
I asked the specific question, you danced, I interpreted.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. You made an assumption, and a very poor one at that. Work on your interpretation skills. No dance there, bud. They're both morally wrong, but you're hyperbolizing.
You made the comparison, sorry it didn't go the way you wanted.
Wow, I made the comparison? You said murder was anti-society. I corrected you.
You make it sound like they're guilty of high treason, as if it's a worse crime.
No, again, this was never about the scale of the crime. It's about whether or not it's fair to deem a single interpersonal crime as an attack on society. In some vague ideological sense, I can agree, but pragmatically, people commit crimes all the time but are still in favor of a functioning society and would vote to maintain that. Now, I understand that murder and rape and such are heinous crimes that evoke a great deal of outrage, but that outrage shouldn't cloud our judgment into thinking that taking away their right to vote does anything beneficial, save for satiating one's thirst for doling out punishment. Now, you could argue all crimes are against society, but then potheads and jaywalkers would lose the right to vote too.
Except I never said merely breaking laws.
And I never said you did, bud.
Acting intentionally against another person, rape, assault, murder, etc., is acting against the survival of a society and should result in the loss of society's benefits.
Well, technically, by definition, littering is acting against the survival of a society, but I get what he means. Acts that physically damage another person. Most people would agree that assault and rape and murder are in that wheelhouse. But again, what good does revoking their right to vote actually do, aside from giving us some false sense of justice? So I replied, I agree they should lose some rights, those related to preventing recidivism, but taking away the right to vote is just punitive. And by this I mean, if you can argue the benefit of the right revoked, then it's acceptable. Like if you kill someone and we segregate you from society until you're rehabilitated, that makes sense. Taking away their freedom to travel and kill more people follows a clear line of logic. The line between interpersonal crimes and the right to vote is blurred. It's a very tenuous connection, and it seems to be based in one's desire to take away something from the offender. And you see, neither of us is really in the wrong. We're just on opposite sides of the aisle. This became a debate on the ethics of revoking rights, and things like right and wrong are ultimately subjective. He thinks voting should be a privilege that you earn, and I believe it's a right that the state owes every last one of us, regardless of one's perceived participation in society. I am, however, on the losing side of this, because as it stands, felon disenfranchisement is still a thing that exists.